Good everyone, welcome to today's video. So I haven't done a video for a little while, and today's video is going to be more related to business than it is fitness. So over the years, having had a small business for a while, a lot of people ask, various advice around business, and I've never been one to do any sort of professional consulting when it comes to business because I've always felt that you really need to have a fair bit of time and experience in the industry or in any industry to really be giving other people advice on how they should run their business. So this video is going to be about 10 insights that I've learned over the 10 years that I've had a business. So the business that I've had has been my sole source of income until very recently when I got a job, still have the business, obviously, but it was my only source of income for about 9 years. And about 3 or 4 of those years was the sole source of income for our family as well. So business for me wasn't really an optional thing in the sense of making it work. It was either make it work or go and get a job. So the first thing, it's a bit of a cliche and it's a bit of something that you'll probably hear from anyone in the business world, is the idea of how difficult it is to build and develop a business. And it's very true that, if you endeavor to make any sort of business work, there's a very good chance it's going to take a lot of work, especially at the beginning. And you can set up systems and processes in order to make things better and more efficient. But initially, especially if you're not coming from any sort of financial backing or any great financial position, you're probably going to be doing a lot of stuff yourself, and you're probably going to be spending a lot more time and energy than you ever thought you could on the business. So if you're not willing to do that, or if you're not willing to go outside your comfort zone as well, so it's not just about hard work from the sense of time, it's hard in the sense of the challenges that you will come up against, psychologically and so on, in order to push through and do things that you may not have to do when you have a job. So the second one is that most people are not making money from their business. So you will see, especially online these days, all these multi-level marketing type programs, people selling some sort of supplement or some sort of makeup thing or whatever it may be. All of these kind of what they will call businesses, but these people are not really making much money. They're definitely not making enough to survive off, and usually they're doing it as kind of a side gig. And there's nothing wrong with this. There's definitely nothing wrong with doing whatever type of business you want. The trouble is that a lot of people kind of sell this as if it's something that will make you a lot of money, or if it's something that is making a lot of money and that these people are doing really well. And it's very rare, unless you have some sort of business that is a genuine business that's on a proper scale and having the volume and the sales and so on, the chance that you make enough money to have a successful and profitable business that you can actually live off as someone selling makeup or Tupperware containers is very, very minimal. And yes, there are those few percent who make money, the vast majority don't. And this is true of many different types of businesses. You look at the amount of money that businesses make at the top. You have the few billion-dollar companies like Google and Facebook and things like that. But as you start to go down, and once you get a pass from those few at the top, the average business doesn't really make that much money. But from the outside, a lot of people, they will do like a back of the envelope calculation, and they'll look at some business and they'll say, well, they're making this much per hour, they're charging, they're cutting my lawn and they're charging $80 or whatever. I'm sure I could do 20 lawns in a day, and I'll be making a fortune. These guys must be making a killing. But when it comes down to it, from the outside, a lot of businesses can look good, a lot of businesses can look profitable, but that doesn't mean they are. There's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more involved, and the expenses, how much people are actually getting in, and then how much they're actually having to spend, is very different. And even when you look at something like the salaries of professionals, say like a doctor or a dentist, And people will sort of think, well, these people are running this clinic, they must be making an absolute killing. And yes, some of them are making a decent amount of money. But if you actually looked at how much is coming in and how much is going out, they've got a very fine line between making money and losing money. So don't be put off, or don't be brought into this idea that everyone out there in business is making a whole lot of money, because most of them are really not. Number 3, focus on the important tasks. So focusing on what is the most important part of the business and the operation. And this might take a bit of time starting out, working out what is the most important tasks for most businesses, although they kind of are similar between different industries. But at the end of the day, you need to get money into the business, and you need to, offer whatever service or good that you have, but you need to have money coming in. So what are the things that are getting the money to come in? Because there are so many tasks that you could be doing, and I think this is even worse in the current world that we live in, because there's so many low value, low quality tasks that you could be doing that kind of make you feel like you're doing work, but they're not really pushing the needle forward. They're not really achieving anything, and they're not really having any outcome for your business. So as an example, for most people, most businesses, the thing they need to do is generate more leads for their business in whatever way they do that, and then get those people into their business and whatever sort of business it is, but into the fold, and bring them into their business to either buy something, a product, a service, or whatever it may be. Now, you may generate leads from something like Instagram, but you could spend all day just taking photos of every single thing that you do, and putting up a million little reels and videos and so on. And yeah, you might get some level of engagement from that. But if you're spending 3 hours a day making content versus 3 hours a day making calls to the current leads you have, you'll know very quickly which one of these is the most important. And it's quite often that the most important task is the one that people avoid, and it's the one that people procrastinate, because there's the option of the lower quality task that kind of makes you feel like you're doing something. It makes you feel like you're doing a bit of work today, but it's not really going to help the business get anywhere. And so you really need to identify for your business and what you offer and what you do, what are the key things you need to do each day that are going to actually make the business work. Because you could make a list of 100 tasks that you could possibly do, but there's a good chance only 5 or 10 of them are actually important and are going to make up 90% of the outcome of the business. Number 4, are you self-motivated? So the biggest difference between a small business and a job for the majority of people is that when it comes to a small business, if you're not someone who is self-motivated, you're not someone who can make themselves work and make themselves do things, then business is probably going to be very difficult for you if you cannot develop this habit and skill. So when you have a small business that's yours and yours alone, there's a pressure of the fact, like once you do get clients and so on, that you probably, if you're a tradesman and you booked in to go and do some work at 10 o'clock today, well, you're probably going to have to go and do that work and so on. There's that pressure. But if you wake up on a Saturday and you have nothing booked, there's no pressure. There's no pressing need for you to actually do anything. And it may be that you really need to do something. It may be that you need to make some ads, or it may be you need to make some calls, or you need to do a bit of accounting, go and clean out your business premise, whatever it might be. But if you're not a self-motivated person, it's very easy to do nothing, essentially, because there's no driving force. Whereas when you have a job, you generally have people or multiple people kind of telling you what to do, and also lining up the tasks that you need to do each day. Whereas when you have to make those tasks up, and when you have to motivate yourself to actually get up and do stuff, if you're not the type of person who does that, then it's something that you really need to work on developing. Because if you're not able to make yourself do the things that you really probably don't want to do that day, then maybe not immediately, but over the long term, the business is just not going to work. So number 5, understanding what stage of the business that you are actually in. Now, when we consider like a small business versus Google, whilst there's some really overarching principles that may be similar between these businesses, there's so many things that are different to the point where, whilst you can maybe learn a thing or two from those businesses, the vast majority of what they do is not going to apply for your business. And a lot of the content out there and a lot of the motivational type stuff, it's always from these people with these $1 million businesses or $100 million businesses. And you're just a guy starting out in your basement trying to get an IT business off the ground, or trying to start an electrician trying to start up a trade business in your local area. You've got to understand where you're at in the business cycle and where you're, what things you have to do. One of the big ones here is the idea of outsourcing. So you'll get a lot of people who have really large businesses, and they'll talk about how, you can't be doing sort of low value tasks as a business owner because so why are you doing the cleaning when you could just pay a cleaner? Why are you doing your accounts when you could just pay an accountant? And once you get some good cash flow coming in, there's a very good chance at the beginning that you're just simply not going to have that money. You're not going to have the ability to outsource most things, and you're going to have to be doing them if you're, especially if you're a smaller business. There's a very good chance that that's the stuff you're just going to have to do for a year or a few years or however long it is until you can then outsource those things. So understanding where you are and therefore what advice is actually applicable to you and your situation, rather than sort of looking at these really big businesses and thinking that your $100,000 a year business has any relevance to it. Number 6, on the same sort of stream here, every industry is different and every business is different. So whilst the things that may work in my industry of fitness and gyms may not work in a landscaping business or an IT company, for me, I work primarily or almost entirely with customers rather than other businesses. Whereas some people may be offering services that work primarily with businesses. So therefore, the things they're doing to generate leads are going to be completely different to what I do. And like I said, those real fundamental principles might be the same as, you got to have money in, you got to control your expenses and so on. Those real base level principles will be the same. What you're doing each day from most of the business tasks is going to be completely different. So when you're considering what advice you're taking when it comes to your business, not only do you have to know where you're at in the business cycle, you have to understand what works in your industry, and the needs of your particular business, rather than thinking that, well, my mate has this type of business and he's been running Google ads, but it's not working for me. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe because your business, people aren't searching for your services. It's a service that needs, if you're doing business to business, it might be that you need to basically go out and meet specific people in business networking circles or whatever it may be. If you're a person that's doing landscaping or electricians and all those sorts of things, it may be that you need to get in with a real estate, whatever it may be. There's many differences between industries, so make sure you consider that when you're taking advice from different people. So number 7, don't plan on the best case scenario. Now, often people, it can be exciting when you're starting up a business or when you're getting involved in something that you maybe been trying to do, and it can lead people to plan for the best case. And the problem with this is that you're probably never going to have a best case scenario. So I remember back in, obviously we all remember, 2020 and 2021, the lockdowns, my gym was shut for about 4 months in both of those occasions, so about 8 or 9 months in total. That was a worst case scenario, and that was a situation where we couldn't trade, we couldn't do anything. And whilst, if you plan on this hopeful state that everything's going to be fine, you're always, you plan that, well, I'm going to get this many people in, I'm going to mow 50 lawns every week, and that's going to be $2,000 a week. Therefore, it's going to be $100,000 a year. So you're never going to get sick. You're never going to have equipment breakdowns. You're never going to have random expenses. You're not going to have clients drop off. You're not going to have any number of issues come up. But the reality is that they're going to be issues all the time. And so you really want to plan with what the absolute best case might be, but then look at what's the more realistic case and what's kind of the bare minimum case to make this feasible. So, your best case situation, maybe the business turns over, profits, I should say, $200,000 a year. But you need a bare minimum of like $100,000 maybe to live off for your family, whatever it is. So the bare minimum is what you really need to make sure that you're not dropping below. And whilst it's good to get to that, it's nice to have hopeful ideas of what it could be. You've really got to look at the realistic factors that may come in, and there's always going to be problems that arise, and there's always going to be things that mean that whilst you thought you were going to be able to make this much, it simply didn't happen that way for a variety of reasons. Number 8, you will need to advertise. So I've had many different friends in many different industries over the years who really have a fear of advertising and spending money on advertising, and they kind of have this mindset that, well, if it's good, there'll be word of mouth, and if it's good, I probably won't need to put myself out there and advertise and so on. But also about the money, they don't want to spend. They look at it and go, but just spend $200 a week on Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever it may be. And now, if you're spending money on advertising that doesn't work, obviously that's a waste of money. But for most businesses, if you're a small business, how are people going to know that you exist if you don't advertise? You're going to have to advertise in some way, and it's going to have to be it's going to have to be a percentage of the amount of money that your business earns. If you've got a business that you want it to make $1 million of profit every year, and you're not willing to spend $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year on advertising, it's probably not going to happen. And if it is making $1 million in profit, then why is $100,000 worth of advertising such a problem? It's about the return on investment. It's about looking at how much you're spending on advertising and how much you're actually getting back from that advertising. And so, like I said, obviously, if you aren't making any money off advertising, off certain types of advertising, then don't spend money on it. But you're going to have to spend money on some advertising at some point, and it's going to have to be, generally for most people, a continual process of paid advertising in some fashion. And this can obviously go along with more organic styles of marketing, but there's almost always going to be a need for paid marketing as well. Number 9, it's your business. Be free with it and understand that, one of the best things, one of the reasons that you have a business is to do things the way you want to do them. And a lot of people, especially if you've had varying jobs or you've, like in many endeavors that we have, we tend to look at what other people do. And whilst this is good in the sense that it can usually give us a good foundation and idea of what we're doing, if you have a business, you're welcome to kind of do whatever you want, obviously legally and ethically and so on. But you're allowed to do the type of things that you want to do. You're allowed to offer the goods and services. You're allowed to do types of services and types of businesses that maybe don't exist. You're able to try out different things. That's the beauty of having a business, is that you have that freedom. So allow yourself to do that and explore some different ideas. When I first started, the gym that I first had was more of a traditional style gym. People came in, did their workouts, and so my spin on that was basically I programmed all of these people's exercise for when they'd come in. So they had gym membership, they would come when they wanted, but each person would come in, they would have a program to go through that I would write for them, so that they were always tracked, and then they could always ask for advice. Versus like a normal gym where people basically just come in and kind of do whatever they want. And then eventually that moved into, whilst I was doing some one-on-one PT at the time, I started doing what was not really, because there was one-on-one PT and there was group PT, which was popular as well, but there was nothing really in the middle. And so what I started doing was what I call semi-private PT. And very, very few fitness businesses were doing this. A lot more do it now, but this is sort of 8, 9, 10 years ago when I started doing it. And basically what this was getting the one-on-one PT, but having, 4, 5, 6 people in a session, but training each person in a completely individual way. And since then, that's been the main form of what my business has been. And it's been the best way that I've found to get results for people with their fitness. It's kind of the best of all worlds. It's the best of everything, in my opinion. But if I'd stuck to those traditional approaches, then I wouldn't be doing that and I wouldn't have the business that I have. I would have been stuck doing what everyone else was doing in the industry. And yeah, there's a bit of value in that, especially when you start. It's often good to do something that maybe everyone else is doing just to understand why it's done that way. And then once you do understand it, you can then use some of that freedom to try out some different things as well. And the last one, understanding accounting and numbers is a very important task. So a lot of people outsource their accounting to other people, and that's fine in terms of doing the actual accounts and so on. But it's one of the things that I think a lot of people probably shouldn't outsource, at least in some sense, just to simply understand the fundamentals of what is actually going on in their business. How much are they, how much are you spending on certain things? How much are you getting in from certain things? Being able to look and understand what those numbers mean, how much tax you're going to be paying, how much super you need to pay yourself, all those sorts of things, because a lot of people don't understand the numbers very well. And whilst it can be complicated, it's also something that most people can learn and understand. And you might work with an accountant and you might work with financial people to ensure that it's all done correctly. But you can learn a lot about your business. And one of the best ways is understanding the financials, understanding the numbers, because that's the lifeblood of the business at the end of the day, is what's going in and what's going out. Because if there's no profit, if there's no money being made, then it's really just a hobby and it's not a business, which is fine if you want a hobby. It's not so fine if you need to live off it. So that's the 10 of the insights. Obviously not, there's a whole lot more we could talk about when it comes to business. But they're 10 of the kind of more important insights that I've had over the years when it comes to business. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope it's been interesting. I'd like to hear your thoughts on business. If you have a small business, if you've been trying to get something started, would love to hear what you think and your experiences with it so far. So if you have any questions, comment it below and I'll talk to you soon.